What's the psychology of former OceanGate's CEO Stockton Rush to actually think that his Titanic submersible was extremely safe when it was clearly extremely dangerous, resulting in an implosion, causing all 5 people on board to sadly perish? First, this is not a formal psychological diagnosis, but it's my opinion based on public resources to help answer the question of what causes someone to become so apparently delusional. Now, let's get started. Richard Stockton Rush III was born in 1962 to a wealthy San Francisco, California family as the youngest of 5 children. His father was a direct descendant of 2 signers of the Declaration of Independence, Richard Stockton and Benjamin Rush. He graduated from Princeton University with a degree in aerospace engineering. He dreamt of becoming a military pilot and astronaut to explore Mars, but his visual acuity disqualified him. So he began working for McDonnell Douglas as a flight test engineer for the F-15 fighter jet project. After graduating with his master's in business from UC Berkeley, he worked as a San Francisco venture capitalist. He had scuba dived some, but seemed more interested in flight than aquatics, and certainly received more formal education and work experience in flight. He got into subs while scuba diving, realizing how miserable it is to be cold and wet, while in a sub you can be warm, cozy, and dry with a hot chocolate. He tried purchasing a sub, but realized quickly that there were fewer than 100 privately owned subs in the whole world. After conducting a marketing study, he found that there was significant demand for underwater tourism. So he co-founded OceanGate with a business partner in 2009 and developed a deepwater submersible using new carbon fiber technology, which they called Cyclops.
I christened the Cyclops.
What many people don't know is that OceanGate was doing dives with their carbon fiber submersibles in shallower water using many of the off-the-shelf parts for about 8 years before they decided to build Titan to dive all the way down to 4,000 meters or 13,000 feet to tour the Titanic.
It'll go to 4,000 meters, be the deepest diving carbon fiber sub ever built.
Which, as you know, Titan sadly imploded, crushing and vaporizing everyone on board in 2 microseconds. The cause for the implosion is widely considered to be a structural defect due to not being capable of supporting the immense sea pressure at those depths. There's a lot of curious psychology to break down here. Did you catch any of it? First, it seems quite curious that Stockton always seemed more interested in flight than the depths of the ocean. He majored in aerospace at Princeton, dreamt of flying to Mars, and worked in aerospace engineering after college. However, after earning his master's in business and then working in venture capital, he seemed to change his focus from his passion for flight to a passion to creating a successful business, and seemed to stumble upon deepwater exploration as a means to do that. However, deepwater exploration is the exact opposite of flight, and engineering-wise, it's completely different with different forces and dangers at play.
There were a lot of rules out there that didn't make engineering sense to me.
Stockton seemed to think that his expertise in aerospace could automatically apply to deepwater exploration.
At some point, safety just is pure waste. I mean, if you just want to be safe, don't get out of bed, don't get in your car, don't do anything. Yeah. At some point, you're going to take some risk, and it really is a risk-reward question. I said, I think I can do this just as safely by breaking the rules.
In psychology, this is called knowledge transference, where when a person feels that since they are knowledgeable in one area, they possess the same level of expertise in different or unrelated areas. This seemed to cause him to reach and stay at the top of Mount Stupid in the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is a cognitive bias that those with low ability or knowledge in a particular area tend to overestimate their competence. This seemed to cause Stockton to begin to develop a dangerous hubris and arrogance in the field of deep water exploration. As we discussed, OceanGate successfully created a shallow water submersible with Cyclops.
We are 28 meters deep right now, and we are about 63 meters from the bottom. This is your horizontal thruster, so you'll go left, right.
Using carbon fiber and off-the-shelf parts, they got a Camping World in Amazon.
If you look back at the earlier designs of deep diving submersibles, they weren't focused on market opportunities, and that led to designs that were large, bulky, expensive. We want to do to ocean exploration what Hollywood's been able to do with space exploration. We want to explore and see something no one on the planet has ever seen before. A submarine's the way to do it.
His submersible didn't implode or anything, which gave Stockton false confidence that his carbon fiber, metal, and plexiglass submersible design would also be successful at far deeper depths to tour the Titanic.
When you have different materials, they have different coefficients of expansion and compression, make repeated cycles in depth, of course you're going to work that seal loose.
The second you start doing carbon composite, with each pressure cycle, you can have progressive damage.
In psychology, this is called illusionary correlation. This refers to the tendency to perceive a relationship or correlation between two variables when in reality no such relationship exists, or the relationship is significantly weaker than is perceived. Therefore, Stockton mistakenly assumed that the success of Cyclops could easily be transferred to a much deeper diving sub by basically just making the sub thicker and stronger and not changing the materials used. Instead of 2-inch thick carbon fiber, make it 5 inches thick.
Joining of the titanium and the carbon fiber. That seal needs to be uniform and small, but not too small. The glue's very thick.
Instead of 3-inch thick plexiglass, make it...
These windows are 9 inches thick, and if they go, it's sayonara in 2 microseconds.
Plexiglass, 7 inches thick.
Christ, that is bullshit!
Acrylic's great because it squeezes in, and before it cracks or fails, it starts to crackle. And so you get a huge warning if it's going to fail.
He's got no instincts.
You know what's more dangerous than a person not knowing what they're doing? Yeah, a person who doesn't know what they're doing but thinks they do.
As I recall, the viewport was not rated for that kind of depth. The manufacturer said this in delivering it.
I believe it's pretty much invulnerable.
And that's pretty much what they said about the Titanic.
That's right.
When experts in the deep water exploration industry heard how Stockton was engineering his deep water sub, they began sharply warning him of the real dangers of implosion because they were not only concerned for human life, but they also knew that a catastrophe like what happened would be bad for their industry.
2018 letter. Members of a committee specializing in submersibles expressed unanimous concern about the sub's safety.
A group of submersible engineers urged Rush to seek certification of the Titan by a safety agency. Rush declined, saying that regulation would stifle innovation.
However, Stockton did not listen. But why not listen to the experts in his industry that he was new to? Stockton seemed to think that they were all overreacting and thought they were in-the-box thinkers who were unnecessarily cautious.
When you're trying something outside the box, people inside the box think you're nuts. Same thing when Elon Musk was doing SpaceX.
And he began to identify as an out-of-the-box thinker, similar to the Silicon Valley greats he was surrounded by when he worked in venture capital. In this clip, does Stockton remind you of anyone?
We only have one button, that's it.
Wait a minute, I've seen submersibles, and they are banks of controls, like cockpit after cockpit.
Exactly. This is to other submersibles what the iPhone was to the BlackBerry. What I want it to be is you walk in, it senses motion, it senses who you are. You say, hello, Titan, it senses your voice. It says, Stockton, how deep are we diving today? So we're going to 4,000 meters. The sub is your vehicle to get there. It should be an elevator. It should not be an exercise in buttons and switches and stuff.
Yes, Steve Jobs with his desire for simplicity by thinking outside of the box. However, Stockton didn't seem to take into account that failure in the consumer tech industry is a lot different than failure in the deep ocean submersible industry. There is a big difference between your smartphone crashing and your submersible imploding. The consumer tech industry can take more product risks to streamline and simplify because the outcome is usually not life or death. But why didn't Stockton see the warning signs that his submersible was catastrophically dangerous? This seems to be due to his hubris, delusions of grandeur with narcissism, and apparent greed to make as much money as possible, which blinded him to the possibility that something catastrophic could happen, due to his apparent confirmation bias. In psychology, confirmation bias creates a tendency that influences people to favor information or evidence that confirms their desired beliefs while disregarding or downplaying information or evidence that contradicts their desired beliefs. But here's the thing, when someone has a high level of hubris, they tend to be overly confident in their own beliefs, ideas, or capabilities. This overconfidence can lead to a heightened susceptibility of confirmation bias, as they become less open to considering alternative viewpoints, information, or evidence that contradicts their grandiose desired beliefs. Their combination of hubris and confirmation bias can create what is called a self-reinforcing cycle. For example, they may surround themselves with like-minded individuals, shut out those who disagree with them, and only engage with sources that confirm their beliefs, further reinforcing their sense of superiority and dismissing any dissenting perspectives.
He says that he was sacked for raising safety concerns. He warned that the submersible posed extreme danger to passengers. There was loss of contact with the surface on that voyage as well. There were electrical problems. A bracket that was holding on a stabilization tube was reattached with zip ties.
Stockton apparently wanted to build a big business around touring the Titanic, but the safest way to do that did not allow for it. Why do you think that's the case? Yes, the safest way to explore deep water is typically in a 1 or 2 person sized steel sphere, so your capsule is equally compressed from all sides.
P.H. Nargeolet, the veteran deep-sea explorer who also perished in the Titan.
How different is the Titan from those other subs?
Completely different. Most of them, you have a sphere.
You need the perfect shape, made of strong, heavy material. A steel sphere. A sphere is still the safest place to be at the bottom of the ocean.
However, from a business perspective, using a small steel sphere was problematic for Stockton because it would never make him very much money. He needed to create a lightweight shuttle to pack as many people in there as possible to make as much money as possible for each expensive trip down to the Titanic. He made a lot more money by getting 3 or 4 paying customers with him instead of just 1. This seems to be why he was set on creating that trash can shaped lightweight carbon fiber submersible.
Squeeze into Titan for each dive and view the wreckage on these monitors.
He was probably also very concerned with costs and wanted to pocket as much money as possible, which seems to be why he cheaped out on parts and controls, such as using a wireless knockoff PlayStation controller.
We run the whole thing with this game controller.
Come on!
Stockton surely continued with his confirmation bias and self-deception for using a game controller to steer the sub, because he probably told himself he's smarter and the rest of the industry was just overly cautious. But from an outsider's perspective, the real reason seems obvious. More button switches, levers, steering apparatuses means what? Yeah, it costs more to engineer and then build that into a custom sub. And in addition to costing more, it takes up more space, causing fewer paying customers to be able to fit into his sub. Therefore, he would make way less money overall. Stockton also seemed to trick his paying customers into doing a lot of the maintenance and prep work, so he didn't have to pay staff to do that work.
OceanGate Expeditions offers you the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be a specially trained crew member safely diving to the Titanic wreckage site. You will be trained as a mission specialist and record valuable findings.
They are doing jobs that are essential to the scientific research, not just busy work.
This is not tourism, you're contributing.
For mission specialists not aboard the Titan sub, there's a full calendar of things to do.
Yes, he called his paying customers crew members that are helping with the scientific research to emotionally manipulate them into feeling that their work is mission critical. But in reality, it was clearly his way just to save money.
He's in it for the money, not the science.
This seemed to be a common theme for Stockton. He looked at everything as a cost-saving maneuver to spend the least amount of money building the sub and then operating it while cramming as many people into his sub as possible to make the most money as possible. But it was all at the expense of safety and his own safety. However, his self-deception with his confirmation bias and likely God complex with his apparent delusions of grandeur and narcissism caused him to shut out the critics, leading him to only believe what he wanted to believe.
Carbon fiber is a great material. It's better than titanium.
Normally, we would all just say, Darwinism, because if a person consistently acts extremely stupid and dangerous, they will surely eventually die. However, he took 4 people with him, one of which was a 19-year-old son of one of the tourists who was originally skeptical of Stockton's sub. The really sad part of all of this is the victims. To be fair, they didn't know much about subs or the real danger of imploding, and they probably really wanted to see the Titanic, so they may have had what is called in psychology motivated reasoning.
And just keep the dream alive, because it's something that I have to do.
Because Stockton's trash can sub was probably the only realistic way for them to ever see Titanic in person. It's easy for us now, with perfect hindsight and without a burning desire to see the Titanic in person, to criticize those who went with Stockton for not seeing the many red flags. However, if it were your lifelong dream to see the Titanic in person and Stockton was telling you what you wanted to hear, that it will be fine and he does it all the time, no issues, no problems, state-of-the-art sub designed with NASA, and the only reasonable way to ever see Titanic is through him, I think in that situation it's more understandable why they at least considered it. Also, since they had $250,000 to spare. Now in the comments, what do you think sadly failed on Stockton's sub to cause the implosion? Let everyone know in the comments below.
Come join us on our next expedition. Don't miss the opportunity to be part of history. The OceanGate Titanic experience. There's truly nothing else like it.
Subscribe for more.